this concept that, young people today feel so disenfranchised, and there's this like a hopeless feeling like they'll never get into home ownership, that ship has sailed. It's
Yeah.
not something that's accessible to them. So they say, well, I might as well just spend all my money
Yeah.
and just live large today because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's almost this way of combating the uncertainty.
Welcome to another episode of Sell Me This Podcast. On this episode, we dive into a fascinating conversation with Luticia Miller around financial literacy, running multiple startups, and what it's like to build a business in Calgary. Plus, my dad gets a shout out right at the beginning of the episode. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Sell Me This Podcast. Today, I am super excited to have with me Luticia Miller. Luticia, I'm just going to jump right into things. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell our guests who you are?
Perfect. So my name is Luticia Miller. I'm the founder of Waylay Financial, which is an employer-sponsored savings program, early days startup.
Yeah.
I'm also the chief strategy officer of another startup called Renewable Recycling, and where we're taking end-of-life wind blades and solar panels and turning those into really exciting new products.
And what do you do with your free time?
What free time?
Yeah, I know. Because one startup is a lot. Two startups is infinity.
Yeah.
And then I know you also do a whole bunch of other stuff outside of those two ventures you're on. Do you work 24 hours a day?
It's kind of like, because certainly I do have my day job. I have the stuff that keeps the lights on. And then, there's a lot of, I'm blocking off weekends to just sit and, when you can like get yourself into a really steady like Excel hole or just like be developing pitch decks, that type of thing, then just like unbroken, concentrated in the zone time. And then once things start to, you kind of get them rolling, and then it's almost like sand between gravel. It just fills in the gaps in between meetings, in between calls, calls on your drive to and from work, things like that.
Are you pretty disciplined? Like I know there's kind of the big rocks theory, right? Which is like, here's the big stones that we're working on. I think there's the YouTube video that I think everyone's seen, which is, if you put the sand in first, all the rocks don't fit. Like, are you pretty disciplined? Is that how you're able to kind of move so many balls forward at the same time?
I think that I'm really disciplined. I'm less structured. So I'm more disciplined, less structured. So in that I am deadline driven. I'm kind of compelled to meet that, that commitment that I said that I'd make. How it gets done, that's where the flexibility comes in. So that's where your evenings, weekends, and all the spaces in between fits in.
I love it. And so tell us a little bit about Waylay. So like I remember when you and I first chatted, I love the idea of what you're building. I think it's a big problem that you're solving. How did you find yourself in that space?
Yeah, certainly. So a bit about Waylay, it's an employer-sponsored savings program. So it's really an opportunity for employers to support their employees in their savings goals as well as their spending. So it's helping employees to save for targeted big purchases. So that could be travel, that could be, sports gear, or it could be a down payment for a house. And it's offering a bit of that structured support all the way from the saving through the spending journey. We know that right now we're talking about record levels of consumer debt. Every algorithm that you meet is designed to make you spend faster, impulsively. It's all about instant gratification. And we really want to change buying habits. We want to remind people what it is, like the satisfaction of delayed gratification. What does it mean to set a goal, to work towards it, and then to achieve it, and remind people how good that feels. But we know that people need a little bit of structure and support along the way. So we're approaching it from the point of greatest impact, which is payroll.
That makes a lot of sense. And this is going to be a weird story that I'm going to draw on. But I remember when I was a kid, I got really into mountain biking.
Nice.
And I still remember to this day, I wanted this Norco Bigfoot bicycle, and it was $800, which is an expensive bicycle at the time. I think my dad at the time made a joke that it was more than his first car. And I remember, be like, Dad, can I buy this bike? And he's like, this is the time you get a job. I think I was like 14 years old, and I got a job at Wendy's. And he's like, I'll split half of it with you.
I love
But
that.
he's like, you need to save up the $400 first.
Yeah.
And the second you have your $400, come to me and we'll head over to the bike store and we'll pick it up. But I learned really, at $6 an hour at Wendy's, all of a sudden you start to get an appreciation for what that $400 or $800 felt like. And that
Mhm.
when you say delayed gratifications, all I hear is my dad in the back of my head growing up being like, delayed gratification, delayed gratification. Um, is it a problem right now that you're seeing where there's a lot of desire to have everything now, yesterday, keep up with the Joneses?
Completely, completely. It's all about instant gratification. I love that you brought up your dad because,
Yeah.
we were doing our market validation and we're talking to employers, and we're talking to employers who are really well connected
Yeah.
to their employee base. And what we heard from one of the interviews, he said, not everyone has that person in their lives growing up that was reminding them, to build some
Yeah.
of this discipline into their lives. So if this is a product that could help them play that
Yeah.
role, play that mentorship role, that's what they were after. So it's super
Yeah.
cool that you brought that up.
Yeah.
And no, everything is, buy now, pay later.
Yeah.
If it's not, it's first off, we got this layer of
Yeah.
credit. On top of credit, we've got, paying for easy installments. On top of that, you've got insurance just in case
Yeah.
the bad things happen. So you can insure your $50 purchase that is on credit so that, if something bad happens in the future. So it's all these layers of this is the cost of immediate gratification. It comes in insurance costs, it comes in interest costs, and when people are making a purchase, they're not looking at that whole
Yeah.
cost. They're just looking at what is it gonna cost me today?
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's this whole conversation sometimes around like not what is the cost of a purchase, but what is the monthly payment? And
Completely.
and this is something that I feel really strongly about too, which
Mhm.
is like I think financial literacy has kind of gone down the toilet for a large portion of the population.
Absolutely.
Because to your point, what is that cost of a purchase? Sure, if I go buy $100,000 truck or car, um, I can stretch that out for 15
Oof.
years. And the great news, my payment's only X amount, but it's at some point I can never sell the car because the value of the asset is still nowhere near the value of what I still owe on it.
Completely, and that sometime happens relatively
Yeah.
quick. It's only a couple years in till you're underwater on that purchase. So,
Yeah.
total cost is a concept that, isn't I wouldn't say there's full literacy
Yeah.
around that. Most people live on, $3,000 to $4,000 of revolving credit, meaning that's their balance that they're keeping on their credit cards every month, and it's just normalized
Yeah.
now. So we're really wanting to just shake things up a little bit. And there's kind of this, I was thinking about this. There's almost like I'm sure you've seen it. There's
Yeah.
almost this trend towards things that are analog, things that are old school,
Yeah.
and it's everything from, give me a hard book that I can hold on to and turn the
Yeah.
pages. Give me a record, so I don't need to be on some digital music streaming. This seems sort of in line with that. Waylay
Yeah.
seems sort of in line with this return to practicality, a return to, give me something tangible. And sometimes that tangibility is just I see my goal. I see myself, working towards it.
Yeah.
For you, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
I've got some dollars in the bank. I'm gonna get to that $400. And then at the end of the day, it's the satisfaction of holding that purchase in your
Yeah.
hands or going on a trip and heaven, heaven forbid, you come back and you get to enjoy the trip because you're not coming back to debt.
Well, and there's so many people like, and you talk about enjoying your purchases as
Yeah.
well. Like I think there's some science, and you're probably well more versed on this than I am. But the longer you delay some of those purchases, the greater the gratification actually is,
Completely.
and you don't have that kind of that post purchase. Depression's probably a strong word, but that kind of post purchase guilt when you
Mhm.
look at the credit card statement or the um, monthly amortization, kind of have this holy shit where you've got all the joy out of it, but you actually have paid none of the price for it.
Completely, completely. So we're all after that dopamine
Yeah.
hit, and then directly after the dopamine hit, the buyer's remorse sets
Yeah.
in, and then the credit card bill shows up, and yeah, it just kind of wipes away all of that joy.
So is a lot of the work you're doing in education then? Because I imagine that the platform and kind of what you're working is helping to create some of those structures around it. But is a lot of the work just kind of changing the desire or the mindset of how people um, spend their money?
Yeah, a huge part of Waylay is the education component. You rightly
Yeah.
identified earlier. The financial literacy is something that it's not taught in schools. We hear that regularly. So, what are the tools that we can give people? So, there's a full education platform. And in addition, we recognize we're up against every other
Yeah.
algorithm that's designed to make you spend. And so, what are we going to do to combat that? And so, we incorporate things like the social aspect. So, because Waylay is an employer delivered platform, there's an opportunity for colleagues and coworkers to be working together to either share their goals. There can be team goals. There could also be, say, team recognition and bonuses. So instead of at the end of completing a big project,
Yeah.
everyone gets a Starbucks gift card.
Yeah.
They get a boost to their Waylay account, and that's something that everyone is working towards together. And there can also be reciprocal. So, if you and I are working together and I know that you're about to get married, I can throw $50 into your Waylay account for your wedding. And then there's the gamification. From our market research, we recognize that these are the things that actually work. These are the things that make people come back to the platform, be engaged with their goals, come back for some education and just incorporate all of that. So at the end of the day, we're all speaking this really
Yeah.
strong financial language.
I love it, and so I can see crystal clear why it's so important for these populations of employees that you know you can just see how it kind of pays
Mhm.
dividends in their lives. If I'm an employer looking to invest in this platform for my team, kind of what's in it for me?
Great question. So a lot of what might not be known widely is that employers are paying the price of
Yeah.
financial anxiety. So when people start to get stressed out about their money, often that's when they start looking for a job. And it can be a major trigger to
Yeah.
somebody going and leaving their place of employment for maybe 50 cents or $1 more an hour. Because when they're in that, survival state of mind, that's all it takes to have them
Yeah.
leave. Waylay offers an opportunity for employers to really connect with their employees, to be able to contribute in ways of matching and recognition to the things that actually matter to the employee. Again, going back to, is it a pizza party
Yeah.
or is it a contribution to something that you're saving for because you actually want that? You've already
Yeah.
identified that that's something that you're into. And so through doing this, employers get to play that role in their employees' lives, and employees get to feel like their employer actually cares about them and what's going on.
Totally, and I can see how it becomes hyper personalized because it's not everyone
Totally.
gets the pizza party.
Yep.
Maybe I hate pizza.
Yep.
Maybe I'm gluten free. Who knows? But it can be something that really calls out to that individual person.
Completely.
And,
Yes.
and so how's the journey been so far? So like when
Uh,
did you launch when did like what's the story been?
Yeah. Waylay was actually thought up about 5 years ago. It was inspired by my grandma, who told me about the old layaway
Yeah,
programs. I don't know if anybody remembers those, but you used to be able to go down to a store, put $10
yeah,
down, and then every paycheck you'd go and you'd put
yeah,
$10 more until eventually you'd paid it off and you get to take your thing home. And she told me that that's how she had the very nice outfits that she had. So quality was important to her. And that inspired Waylay a number of years ago, but I wasn't really in a place where I could devote the time and attention
yeah.
to it until this year. And then I identified a co-founder, Elida. She's incredible. I invited her to join me in creating Waylay a year ago, and we really kicked it off in January. The journey has been it's startup world is always
Yeah.
exciting. It's super highs, it's super lows. It's like being at the casino. I swear,
Yeah.
it it's this brainworm that's in your head and you're compelled to do something with it. And it takes all of your time, all of your
Yeah.
money, and all of your attention.
Yeah.
But it is so exciting and so rewarding, and you love it like a child.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think that like is this your first startup?
No. No, I've participated in probably around 5 different
Yeah.
startups in different capacities. Through that, I've had the opportunity to learn from founders and learning everything from, different structures, different involvement, capacities, who's required on the core team, what do you need in terms of advisors, both official and not. Um, and then into the fundraising journey, which
Yeah.
is, a whole new adventure. But yeah, there's just something really engaging about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to be a person who likes excitement. You also, I think, have to be a person who is optimistic. I think
Yeah.
all entrepreneurs need to be optimistic. That's the only thing that can drive us to
Yeah.
say, hey, there's a problem, and I am positive that I can
Yeah.
solve it. There's a solution out there. So,
Yeah. One, I think if you talk to a lot of really successful entrepreneurs, there's almost that blind optimism sometimes where you kind of have to put the blinders on certain things and just and
mhm.
trudge forward, and the only direction is forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I shared with you earlier
Yeah.
that Waylay has been going through our market
Yeah.
validation. So we're talking to anybody and everybody in the space that we think has an opinion that's going to matter
Yeah.
to us, and not all of that feedback is positive.
Yeah.
So we've received warnings from some people like, "Hey, these are concerns of mine." Some people kind of express, varying levels of whether this is a great idea and this is absolutely necessary to. I'm not sold on it, but all of that is valuable,
Yeah.
and you have to have enough commitment. This is what we're seeing is that we have to have enough commitment and love for the thing that we're building, but enough realism to understand that, my baby isn't the cutest
Yeah.
baby, Des-
Yeah.
despite what I might think. And so have to be willing to listen and to pivot where
Yeah.
necessary.
Well, we were recording another podcast earlier
Hmm.
today, and that was a big part of the conversation, which was the idea of kind of falling in love with the problem, not the solution.
Completely.
And I love what you said, which is, the problem exists,
Hmm.
but maybe the exact recipe, how the ingredients all come together, tweak a little bit, and
100%.
and not necessarily being, this is my, pardon my pun because it was an idea from your grandma, but like this is my grandmother's recipe. I got to follow it exactly to saying, okay, like we're gonna figure out what the proportion of everything that goes in is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like this was born out of a big idea is
Yeah.
that people need to change their spending
Yeah.
habits, not just their savings, but their spending habits. How can we help them do that? And the approach that we've currently taken is that, well, we think we can do that best through payroll.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the way, but we're going to explore it until we kind of get the right fit, because ultimately at the end of the day that problem still exists and we think that we can change it.
Yeah. So as you're going through this process, I know it's not easy, but how do you balance that um, stubbornness that's required? And I think stubbornness might be the apt word to push through some of these roadblocks
Mhm.
with also not pivoting every like 15 seconds with each
Oof.
morsel of feedback you get. Because I know it can be really appealing to say, okay, well, someone said this, we'll tweak this. Someone said this, we'll tweak this. Like, how do you create that balance between what you know to be true
Mhm.
and some of the external feedback that you're getting?
That's a really great question, because it is quite easy. You can talk to someone, you could find yourself kind of doing this
Yeah.
fishtail. And I think that's where gut and intuition
Yeah.
comes in. There have been times where I've left a conversation and thought like, "Oh man, this is what we need to do." They're absolutely
Yeah.
right. But then when you sit with it for a moment and you feel it out, you get back to, you know what? There was elements that I really appreciate that they shared with me, and I think I can incorporate it here. But you sense in yourself where you actually need to be.
Yeah. No, and as you're telling those stories, like I reflect on even our experiences where we've been building Deliver Digital. It's
Mm.
it's so appealing sometimes to say, like it's almost the easy. It's easy to be fixing something, and
Mhm.
it feels like motion. And sometimes the harder path is actually sticking with the current path.
Totally. Yeah, you're absolutely
And
right.
yeah, and so I had some really good advice from a friend that's been quite successful in the startup space, where he advised me, try to find themes, write down things, and then kind of batch them, and then don't try to act on everything immediately. Where
That's
you can kind of make the to do list, review it once a month versus daily.
absolutely.
Yeah,
A long time ago I played in the Calgary Corporate Challenge. I don't
yeah,
know if you're
I
familiar with
am. Yeah.
that.
Which sport did you? Which was the
It was volleyball,
okay?
and it wasn't great.
Yeah.
I think I actually they tried to cut me from the team.
Oh my goodness, you were
But
you were the healthy scratch.
yeah, exactly. But some of the feedback, my coach, who actually was a really good
Yeah.
friend of mine at work, in watching us play, and he was a great volleyball player, he said, Luticia, just pause.
Yeah.
When you see the ball coming towards you, don't react immediately.
Yeah.
Just pause and see where it's going to go first before you react. And just like you said,
Yeah.
have a great idea. Doesn't mean you need to act on it right away. And so, being an action-based person,
Yeah.
that's the impulse, is to jump on it right away. But sometimes it's like, Letitia, hit pause.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and like I said, it can be appealing sometimes to just kind of be in motion.
Mhm.
So what's your story then? So, you've arrived at the spot where you're, advising some organizations, you're building a couple startups, you have a few extra hours in the day. How does Letitia arrive where you are today?
Hmm. Well, long, interesting journey, I like to think. But I started in industrial construction when I was 20 up in Rainbow Lake, Alberta. So way up in the
Yeah.
north in the cold. And we like to say started on the dumb end of a shovel and came up through construction that
Yeah.
way. And I loved it. I loved every single second of it. Um, Came up through quality and then started to focus in on project management. So full scope project management office. That means, scheduling, cost management, performance analysis, and
Yeah.
full scope sort of project
Yeah.
management. Um, when I sort of hit the ceiling where, a person wants to get into the executive level, I looked around, recognized that I wasn't going to get there without an executive MBA. So I did my EMBA through the Smith School of
Yeah.
Business at Queen's University in actually beginning of COVID. Super lucky that I just signed up in April of COVID. Had no idea that we'd be where we were for a
Yeah.
few years, but the fact that it was delivered entirely digital was incredible for me in my life at that time. What I didn't know is I thought I was going into my EMBA to get access to the executive
Yeah.
circle, to maybe be a VP of something, maybe, move on from there. What I didn't know is I'd be given the language for entrepreneurship. And that's where I truly found the love and came out of that saying, I know how to do this, not in terms of I know everything, but hey, I can do this. And I think that I have the language enough to get me started, to start asking the right questions and to start getting involved with other people's startups and the entrepreneurship journey. And that's sort of it grew out of there.
And so I've talked to so many people that have gone through, maybe not the exact trajectory, but
Mhm.
where they've built up this knowledge base, the set of skills, for and with someone else. And then they decide at some point in their career to say, I want to bet on myself. I want to bet on, these ideas versus just the time that I'm committing to someone else. Like, how was that leap for you to kind of make that shift from someone that really was, I don't want to say a cog in the machine, but
Mhm.
someone that was contributing to someone else's larger vision, to really taking that leap to bet on yourself?
Mhm. I've always had this thought that if I don't do it, someone else will.
Yeah.
And if it's a problem that needs to be solved, like somebody's got to. And it kind of ended up getting frustrated at seeing the problem continually not solved.
Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of pushed into this spot of, okay, well, somebody's got to do it. Might as well be you.
Yeah.
Um, and so in terms of betting on myself, that's a hard one. We're going to cut this part out.
I
But
only ask the stumper questions.
yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of betting on myself, it's really, for one, I've got my mom in the background
Yeah.
saying that I can do anything.
Yeah.
She's, just this undying wealth and of positive reinforcement, but also looking at, okay, I've got the practical tools. I know how to manage projects. I've got the business acumen. I've built companies. I've built them up and launched and done all the things in between. So if I look at
Yeah.
my CV, everything's there. The recipe is there. So might as well just jump ahead and do it.
Are you happy on the timing? Like, are you glad you did it when you did?
Mm,
Um, do you wish you did it sooner? Do you wish you did it later? Like, I know time hindsight's always 2020,
mhm.
but are you happy about how everything worked out from a timing perspective?
I'm really happy, actually. Um, I did my EMBA when I was 40,
Yeah.
and I feel like I had a depth of experience that I could actually apply it to. If I look back and I had approached that 15 years earlier,
Yeah.
I feel like it just would have fell through my
Yeah.
hands like sand because I didn't have anything to adhere it to. I didn't have anything to adhere the information coming in to practical examples in
Yeah.
life. So I feel from that perspective, the timing was perfect. Also, my boys were teenagers at the time,
Yeah.
so from the motherhood
Yeah.
standpoint, this isn't something that I could have done earlier.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe the universe puts in
Yeah.
front of us what we need at the time, and it worked out in a way that, like, honestly, I couldn't be happier with.
That's incredible. When you think about the journey that you're on, what's the thing that excites you most about kind of what you have in front of you?
All the possibility. Um, there's just so Number one, I think that right now I have an incredible network. Calgary is this place that is so fully supportive of entrepreneurs, of people who are just willing to like pull up their socks and say I can do it.
Yeah.
People who are willing to support each other, to do intros, to give feedback. So I'm really excited about the network that I've built, and it feels that it's at this point of maturity that gives me more confidence
Yeah.
to launch from. Some other things that are happening in sort of our sphere right now, big focus on Canada and major
Yeah.
projects, as well as attention on the defense sector, which
Yeah.
one of my other startups there's inroads there. These are things that matter greatly to me. I'm a huge Canadian patriot. Always have been. Served in the military
Yeah.
when I was a late teenager. So an opportunity to get to contribute to that both from a corporate Canada perspective, but also a Canadian security and
Yeah.
defense perspective, that just makes my heart warm.
Yeah, I think there's been so much I do want to dive into the Calgary conversation because
Mhm.
I'm a fanboy about Calgary as well, and I was having that conversation this morning with someone, which I feel like it's a city of people with their hand out to help versus their hand out to get something.
Oh, I love that.
And
Yeah.
thank you. And I just there's so many kind of forces, both internal and external, that have come together that I would you'd have to argue pretty hard to convince me that there was somewhere better else to launch a business in Canada.
Oh, completely.
Um, I was having a coffee with someone in Vancouver a couple of weeks ago, and they're talking about the idea that they launched a startup, but it's really terrifying to launch a startup when the cheapest house you can buy is $1.5 million.
Exactly.
Um, so we have affordable housing, we have um, a supportive ecosystem. I think that there's some really interesting kind of government innovation happening around the supports for startups and businesses, and so you'd have to convince me pretty hard to say somewhere else.
Oh, completely. That cost of living factor is something that cannot
Yeah,
be overstated.
yeah,
The fact that if you've got some wiggle room in your budget at the end of the day
yeah,
that you can actually work with, it's entirely necessary because, before you start attracting the attention of even angels,
yeah,
you've got to have some skin in the game.
yeah.
So
And
we're incredibly fortunate that way.
well, that leap's terrifying regardless. But
Mhm.
I think that some of those external factors help sometimes. I also really love what you said about that idea of context, um, and the idea of kind of building some of that experience in that context before you take that leap.
Completely.
And I'm curious on your perspective because I've had a couple other folks that are, we'll say, like early stage in their lives, early 20s, that are thinking about doing like launching something, and the ideas are there, but I think there's something to be said for kind of, I don't want to say learning on someone else's dime, but learning from other people that have been there, done that, and gaining some of those reps before you take that leap. Like I think that yeah,
It's hugely invaluable. Absolutely. If I think back to my days in, I won't name who, but, major construction, like essentially
yeah,
construction firm, what I learned there just in terms of interpersonal skills and leading a
yeah,
team, as well as the hard technical
yeah,
skills. That was great. What I learned in terms of, almost translating language from one group to
yeah,
another. And that's critically important because now, as a startup founder, I don't come from a fintech
yeah,
background, but I need to have the language to be able to convey between different stakeholders of what we're working with. We need to, as a found up starter, you need to be able to talk tech and development, but then also talk investment and
Yeah.
structure. And those aren't things that you just naturally know out of the gate.
Yeah.
And yeah, so learn on other people's
Yeah.
dime. Say yes to every opportunity because you don't know what you're going to come
Yeah.
up away with that's going to be valuable later.
Yeah. And so what you're talking about almost, and like I could even see some of the similarities between your experience and even the narrative of what you're building around that idea of almost that delayed gratification too. Um, and maybe that's just more of a societal theme that we need to kind of wrap our heads around. But I think that that idea of investment now for later return
Mm-hmm.
um, seems to be something as like societally that we're rewarding less and less, or maybe we need to kind of flip the fulcrum the other way.
Absolutely. Like I'm sure you've noticed there is this return to stoicism,
Yeah.
and stoic principles are really gaining popularity
Yeah.
right now, and I think it's because people feel like we inherently, and I'm wild gamble, I'm just speaking on my own
Yeah.
behalf, but when I look at society, this is what I see. I
Yeah.
feel like we're all feeling a little bit hollow.
Yeah.
Things aren't as satisfying as they should be, which means we're just reaching for the next thing and the next thing. But if we can learn to be happier and more content with where
Yeah.
we're at, and appreciate it for what it is, appreciate today for this stage in the journey that it is,
Yeah.
and that the real goal, the goal is to come, and the real prize is out there, but today is a gift. Let's appreciate it.
And I think that's easier said in practice sometimes, like especially with the kind of the wiring of everything and kind of the pursuit of more, and even the way that our
Yeah.
economy is built on consumption.
And
Um,
never ending growth.
right. And
Right.
so if you don't have more people to sell to, you need to sell more
Yeah.
people more stuff.
Yes.
And so like you're definitely kind of fighting like a salmon swimming upstream against some of these forces. Uh,
Completely, yeah. Who out there is gonna tell you, "No,
yeah.
we've sold enough. We've
Yeah.
sold enough.
Yeah.
Our revenues are enough."
Yeah, no, we're good. We've arrived. Thank you very
Yeah,
much, but maybe
exactly.
next year.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the things like because I know we haven't talked too much around the advisory work you do as well. And so, you've had the opportunity to wear a couple different hats. You get to walk the walk with the startups. You get to you've built some of your experience in some of these larger organizations. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the advisory work you're doing on top of your two full-time day jobs?
Yeah, certainly. So, I am Cree Métis,
Yeah.
member of, Métis Nation of Alberta, Aptamswak, and, I am fortunate in that I get to advise in the, Indigenous
Yeah.
economic empowerment area. So supporting First Nations who are taking equity stakes in major projects, which is a marrying of both who I am plus
Yeah.
my background in construction. It's an incredibly rewarding space, and fast moving. If we were to take a look at, where was Indigenous participation in major
Yeah.
projects even 10 or 7 years ago versus where it is today,
Yeah.
it's just incredible. So I get to again play that translator role in, sitting between industry and Indigenous communities, and get to sort of cross translate what are some of the shared objectives, what are some of the goals of each party, and how can we achieve those together.
That's incredible, and I don't argue to know anywhere near about the same amount about that world, but it seems like there's progress being made, especially in terms of participation. Like, do you think that's coming from a legislative standpoint? Do you think it's coming from an investment standpoint? Like, where is some of that momentum coming from? Because I think it's a really positive thing.
There's a few different areas. So number one, Canada, when they dove in
Yeah.
on the Truth and Reconciliation Council and the commitments that came out of
Yeah.
that, number 92 is huge for
Yeah.
the business community, and it really kind of opened everyone's eyes, created it created a
Yeah.
conversation around Indigenous awareness. What is some of the history that we need to consider
Yeah.
in context? And what started maybe as a government initiative, I saw, really coming from the hearts and minds of people in industry. People were asking the questions because they're genuinely curious and genuinely cared, not because the government told them they needed to
Yeah.
care about call number 92. Um, and then from the investment side of things, really, it's a risk mitigator. And, investors recognize, capital recognizes that if you don't consider one, the legislative
Yeah.
requirements, but number two, the voices of rights holders, then you are merely carrying on your back
Yeah.
this risk that one day if it's not going to delay you up front for a
Yeah.
multitude of reasons, then it's just this invisible risk that you're going to carry until one day it'll materialize.
Yeah. I really like how you said that. And I think that um, the work isn't done by any way, shape, or form, but I think that
Mhm.
at least the arrow is pointed in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and so do you see those kind of multiple worlds? Like you seems like you wear infinity hats. Um,
Funny.
do you see those ever kind of collide? Do they come together? Do you feel like Clark Kent, where you kind of have to put on your superhero cape and kind of change from one life to the other? Like how does everything come together to kind of fill up your life?
It's interesting if I look at it that way. I think they naturally just braid together.
Yeah,
For Waylay, one of the
yeah,
things that we're looking at, it's an opportunity to gather something of an informal, what we call a reputational index,
yeah,
but almost like an informal credit rating as a person uses our system, because there are groups that are left out of traditional financing. And that can be Indigenous populations that don't have the same access to credit, to capital, even to, to the same degree,
yeah,
home ownership. And so we need to enable other methods of credit and finance and access to money, or think new Canadians
yeah,
and the immigration population. So what are ways that we can assist people? Because if they don't have that traditional credit history, what ends up happening is they're paying more for everything.
right.
Higher rates on credit cards, higher rates on loans and mortgages. So yeah, naturally, just kind of all these different elements blend together in one shape or form.
That makes sense. And so if you think about kind of the journey that you've been on, um, and you look back to maybe like post EMBA, Lutitia, as you're about to really, it sounds like make some of these pretty significant pivots in your life. Like, is there advice that you'd give yourself from the things that you know now? Looking back to that version of yourself.
Looking back, I would say thumbs up, Letitia. Good job on saying yes to
Yeah,
everything. I know it was exhausting at the time,
yeah,
but it worked out, because it was from all of those experiences that I got to a point
yeah,
where I can actually activate some of those experiences. Um, I'm just gonna do, I'm gonna sound like the old ninny here, but be prudent with your dollars.
yeah,
You know, saving upfront, saving early, being cautious with your money upfront just gives you options later. And that's what I tell my boys who are now
yeah,
know what we call baby adults.
yeah,
Um, is the more cautious you are now, it doesn't mean don't live your life. It just means do it in an intentional way
yeah,
so that you get the experiences that you want, but you preserve your options for later.
yeah. Well, what's the saying? I think that there's two things that people can't comprehend, and it's time and compound interest.
Yeah, fair enough.
um, but yeah, I think that's really prudent advice, especially
Mhm.
with some of the chaos in the world right now. Um,
Mhm.
so if you, and I know no one has a crystal ball, but if you think about some of the impacts around AI and some of the technology side of things, like I see the need for the conversation you're having probably more important than ever,
Yeah.
because I would say that there's some incredible things that have come together, but there's also a lot of uncertainty in the world right now.
100%. And it's that uncertainty and that financial anxiety that leads people. Have you heard of this thing called doom spending?
No, I actually have not. It's
So
they're well
interesting,
branded.
and it's so interesting, and the literature is out there, but it's essentially this concept that young people today feel so disenfranchised, and there's this like a hopeless feeling like they'll never get into home ownership, that ship has sailed, it's
Yeah,
not something that's accessible to them. So they say, well, I might as well just spend all my money
yeah,
and just live large today, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's almost this way of combating the uncertainty. So that's where one of the things that we're trying to give some hope and saying, don't give up on those dreams. There are ways of getting there, and even if it's through Waylay and employers pitching in, that's great. But yeah, it's a big, wildly changing world. What's really cool is and again, we're kind of doing that whole return to what used
Yeah.
to be, is this refocus on the trades.
Yeah.
So I'm the mother of, two late teenage boys, and I would love to see them, going and getting a practical trade, because that's not something that's easily replaceable
Yeah.
by AI. You can say what you want about factories, but when
Yeah.
we're talking about somebody's going to be out in the cold, building something, somebody's going to be wiring, somebody's going to be putting up these
Yeah.
houses, and that practical knowledge is just so
Yeah.
invaluable.
Well, I think it was Jeffrey Hinton that said like his advice to his kids is become a plumber.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that robotics and everything like will come a long way, but they're probably furthest away in the crosshairs for many of those job changes. And even if I think about the comfort of letting a robot into my house to change the kitchen sink,
Exactly.
like I think that we're still a ways away from that.
We are, and it's always nice to have practical skills to fall back on, just
Totally.
in your own lives. Like, there's something satisfying about that.
Yeah.
So
Even I learned to change the oil in my car when I
nice.
was a kid, and we have an electric car now, so it doesn't have any oil.
Mm.
But if we ever need to, I'm sure I could figure it out again.
Exactly. No, it's stuff like that that's just like, just makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember like even when we bought our first house,
Mhm.
building the fence was like, and I know it sounds like a funny thing, but I've always worked office jobs,
Exactly. To get
and
out there swinging a hammer.
yeah, and it's tactile. At the end of it,
Yeah.
you can actually see what you've built, and there's this pride of building something.
There is. And, and that, careers in
Yeah.
construction, I can still drive by, generation plants that I was on, like
Yeah.
things that I helped build. And I'm going to be like, yeah, I built that. I
Yeah.
built that gas plant. I was on that pipeline, that solar field right there, I was a part of.
And
So there's something really cool in
yeah,
that.
and those are key pieces of our infrastructure, right? It's
Yeah.
not just the fence that makes sure my dog doesn't get out. It's
Mhm.
this community has power because of the work that I did over here.
Yeah, it's a generous way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lutitia, I feel like this has been an incredible conversation. Um, is there any kind of final words that you wanted to leave with our listeners around either the journey that you've been on, if any wisdom you have for people that are maybe at that precipice of wanting to take that leap and that bet on themselves?
Absolutely.
Like what words of wisdom would you have?
There is not a day of education, a certificate, a course, a program that I've ever regretted. And it's all contributed to just being able to participate in more conversations. So I say yes to all of those opportunities. Um, if there's something that you're interested, put up your hand to volunteer. Maybe you're sitting on a committee and you're just giving some of your time. And even when you're not contributing, you're getting, but people
Yeah.
appreciate your perspective that you're going to bring.
I love it. And if someone wanted to reach out to you, either to pick your brain, they want to learn more about Waylay or any of the work that you're doing,
Mhm.
what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Best way is LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on there, and sort of all my streams come together on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'd be happy to connect.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today. This has been an absolute blast of a conversation. I feel like it could probably go on for another 2 hours, but I'll save your calendar a tiny bit. And thank you so much for making the trip today.
This has been awesome. So thank you.
Awesome. If you've made it this far, like and subscribe on YouTube, or follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform so you don't miss any future episodes.